I want to introduce you, to the extent that you don't know, to the NetBeans ecosystem. I want to do some demonstrations of NetBeans, and I want to also talk about some new features that are coming up. I want to give some historical perspective about where it comes from. I'm sure everyone, if you're not using NetBeans, you know that it exists at least. I want to tell you where it comes from, its background, who uses it, where is it used, and I want to do a lot of demonstrations of the really most interesting features, and also the features that are coming up in the upcoming releases. So the logo of NetBeans, the slogan, is actually the smarter and faster way to code. That's always been our official slogan. So it's always been about not on the one hand helping you get started coding traditionally in Java very quickly by providing templates and things like that, but also smart, so analyzers and profilers and debuggers and those kinds of things. So this combination of quickly getting things set up, on the other hand, providing tools to analyze the code and so on. But increasingly, our slogan is changing a bit to putting the pieces together. So NetBeans, putting the pieces together. And it means two different things. On the one hand, it means, if you're a programmer of any kind, whether it's Java or whatever it is, you're doing many different tasks. You're coding, you're debugging, you're deploying, all these different things. And you could use many different tools. But what NetBeans is there for is to integrate all those different processes into one whole, so putting those different pieces together. Also, in another sense, it puts the pieces together because it's about community. It's always not only been about NetBeans as a development environment, but also NetBeans as a community of developers around the world and enabling people to get started programming. So this is why NetBeans is very popular at schools and universities, because that's always been one of our strong focus points. What I want to do is talk briefly about the history of NetBeans, its unique features versus other options, do some demos, and talk about the community. So NetBeans comes from Prague in the Czech Republic. It was started in about '96 when a group of students, decided that for their end-of-year thesis, at the technical college in Prague, they would create a tool for this cool new language, Java. Because at that time, that was the cool new language, of course. And there wasn't an editor, and there wasn't a debugger, and there wasn't a profiler. There weren't all these different tools. So they thought it would be nice if such a tool were to exist for this language, you support it. And so in a way, what NetBeans is a student project that just got out of hand, and it just became popular and is widely used and so on. But it started with a group of students, and at some point they went with this tool. And it turns out there's a new book about NetBeans, and the foreword is by this guy, Jaroslav Tulach, who's the NetBeans API architect. From the original group, and was that for a very long time. And he wrote a foreword in which he talks about the history of NetBeans and also about the starting phase. And it turns out they spent all of their time in a pub. That's how it started. It was just they spent all the time in the pub, and then there was time pressure in the last week, and they threw something together, and they presented it, and it was brilliant, and they passed, and then they had to work on it better, and they ended up modularizing it and all these things. But it's really a kind of design by pub process. Of course, in Prague, it's full of pubs, so there are many opportunities. It's used very widely all over the world. The most famous NetBeans user is still James Gosling. So this group of students went to a conference to present this tool that they had made. And at the conference was Sun Microsystems, and James Gosling was the head of the tools organization, and Jonathan Schwartz was there. And they saw this tool being demonstrated, and they said, "Hey, that's nice. We have this language, Java, but we don't actually have a tool that combines all the different tasks together yet. The other IDEs and tools hadn't been developed yet at that point." And this group of students had formed an organization, and Sun Microsystems bought that organization, and the development of NetBeans continued in Prague from that time. It continues to be maybe 95% of development of NetBeans happens in Prague. So that's where it started, and there's many organizations around the world who use it in different ways. NASA and Boeing, Microchip, large organizations. It's also used a lot to create libraries, so like prime faces. It's used Raspberry Pi embedded development. It's used at universities and schools. JFreeChart, another library, is written in NetBeans. So it's used in many different contexts. So that's very briefly the history. So now the next point is the unique features. Of course, it's free and open source, and that's not true for all IDEs and editors out there. Some are not free, and some are partly open source. But NetBeans has always been from the beginning an open source tool. So you can see all the source code. It's on Mercurial, and it's free. And that's never changed, and it's never going to change. The other point about NetBeans is that it's always been focused on being very easy to get started with. So this is why it's often used at schools and universities, because you download it, you install it, you start it up, and you can immediately do your development work. You don't need to look for lots of plugins. There is a big plugin ecosystem, but for the important functionality, it's always there out of the box. So that's always been a very strong focus on being complete and comprehensive and integrated. The other point is it's the official IDE of the Java platform. So when you download the JDK from oracle.com, there's an option there, do you want to include NetBeans? And that's not true for any other IDE. And what that means is when a new release of Java comes out, like Java 7, there was NetBeans 7, Java 8, NetBeans 8. Next year, Java 9, and there'll be NetBeans 9. And we already have tools in the development builds that support the current builds of Java 9. You can already do jigsaw development, and I'll show some of that using NetBeans. Maven and HTML5 are really, if you're using Maven in any way and you're not using NetBeans, you should really look at NetBeans, because that's one of its key features, and I'll do a small demo of that, and the HTML5. Because as you said, people are, in the Java world, treating Java more and more as a service and doing more and more front-end stuff in JavaScript. So NetBeans increasingly is catering to that switch, so providing more and more JavaScript-oriented tools. So I'll do a very small demonstration to break the talking. First of all, I'll show you some HTML5 stuff. So create a small application. Hello, Marmo. And this is, so I could create an Angular application. There's all these different templates that are built in here, Twitter, Bootstrap, whatever, but I'll just say nothing. And I could use Bower and Grunt and Gulp and so on. And I'll click Finish. So what we have now is simply an index file, nothing else. So now what we can do is we can open this into the Chrome browser. And in the Chrome browser, you can see the special NetBeans icon. And this icon comes from a plugin on the Chrome App Store, which you can install into Chrome. And then you can connect Chrome to NetBeans, as we're going to do. So for a start, let's take a look how would this application, this amazing application right now, look on a smartphone. So like this. So you can change the resolution, which is not all that impressive, but it's a starting point. I'll just put them next to each other so you can see them side by side. So here's the one, and here's the other one. And now I can say here, inspect in NetBeans mode. So I click on this here, and if I have the window open here, browser DOM. So you can see this window on the left here. You can see the browser here. So you can see that when I click on this item in the browser, something is highlighted down there in the browser DOM. So let's add some more here. So you can see also I'm typing directly in the editor, and I've now pressed Save, Control S, and you can see automatically the browser updates. So I don't need to go to the browser and refresh it. I make my change in the editor, I press Save, and immediately it's updated. So I can browse, I can go on so my cursor is now on the bottom left, and I've selected the second one, and you can see that in the browser, that same matching DOM element is selected. So this becomes more interesting when we add a style sheet. So I'll add a style sheet called styles, and in my style sheet, we'll say that the H1 has its color. So you can see also in this code completion, you can see which browser supports the properties that I'm using here. So as I go up and down this list, you can see that this changes depending on which browser support that particular property. So now I choose color, and here's a color picker, and I make this red. Okay, so H1 is red. So now I want to include this here, and you can just simply drag and drop it. And there it is. And also you can see that when I press Control-Shift-Enter, everything around it disappears, and I just have the editor. So, you know, if I want to have all the windows around it, this is the standard view, but this is the distraction-free view. So let's make one of these H1. So I'm just typing in the editor again, H1. I do save, Control-S, and immediately it's applied to the to what I see in the browser. Now, where this becomes really relevant is when you take, imagine that you take over an application from somebody else. So somebody has created a very nice application, and you have to maintain it. So let's take this guy. So here's an application that you have inherited from somebody else who left or something like that. And so you want to get an idea, okay, so what does the application look like? So you run it again in the browser. And you notice, it's a rabbit store, online rabbit store. And here are the rabbits and here are the descriptions. And you think, well, I would like these rabbits to be larger, these images. So how would you know where to find the width and the height of these images? So you could do a search through all of your application for width and height, but it could be in a CSS file, could be in JavaScript, could be in HTML, could be anywhere. So what you can do with this is you can, again, you can say inspect in NetBeans mode, and then click on one of these images, and you can see now that it finds the matching image. And when I click on text here, you can see that it finds the matching p tag. So we can jump from there into the code, or there is a CSS view. Here's CSS view. So now when I click on that image, I can see the CSS properties. So this is where the width and the height are defined in the CSS. You can see here there's 50 and 50. So now I'm just using the up arrow key. And I'm just pushing the up arrow key, and I'm not doing save, and I'm not refreshing the browser. But you can see automatically that the image updates itself simply because I'm pushing my up arrow key on my keyboard. So it just happens magically. And then from here, I can jump into the source. And here is that height and that width. And again, I can change this directly in here. And again, I haven't pressed save yet because I want to tweak. And once I'm happy with tweaking, then I'll say save. Okay, so that's what it looks like that, or like this. So all these web development type tools. So if you're doing front-end development in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, NetBeans is really good for that. If you're on the homepage of NetBeans, you go to download. What I would recommend, if you're doing that kind of work, if you're just doing front-end development work, that you use the HTML5 JavaScript download. I would recommend never use all, except in the very unlikely scenario that you're doing C++ and Java. There are some, corner cases, but in general, for normal development, you're probably either doing desktop Java, or you're doing Java EE, or you're doing HTML5, or you're doing PHP, or you're doing C++. It's more than likely you're doing mostly one of these, and that you choose the one that you need. And if you choose this one, you get the JRE with it, and you can start it up, and you would then only have HTML5 tools. So in the new project dialog here, you will not see everything that I see here. You will only see HTML5 JavaScript in this list. So you will see this one, and you will see PHP, and that's it. And here are many examples and starting points and things like that. So that's basically the highlights of the JavaScript HTML5 stuff. So that's one demo I wanted to do, just to show you how well integrated all that is. But the second thing I wanted to talk about is the Maven integration. So typically, if you have a Maven project, so who here uses Maven? Okay, Quite a lot of people. So typically you have a Maven project and you want to open it into a development environment. So you go to File, Import, and you point to some folder, and then you go through like 25 different dialogues. And at the end of that, there are some files are thrown into that folder to make it a project. And then the project opens, and then there are some very specific build and run tasks that are defined by that development environment. Often it is like that. But what I want to show you is how it can also be. So I'll just go outside my development environment to show you the project that we're going to look at. Here it is. So Customer Manager. So you can see it's a Maven project because it's got a POM file. And there's a source folder, and there's main, and these are, it's all exactly what you would expect from a Maven project. So in NetBeans, you don't file, import, and go through all kinds of steps. Instead, you say open project, and you point to that folder, and you can open it. And here it is. And when I look back in that folder, nothing has been added to it. NetBeans didn't put something into that folder to make it a project. It saw that there was a POM file and understood this is a Maven project. And then it built this, this logical view here based on what it found in the POM file. So in the POM file, there are dependencies, of course. So there's a list of dependencies. And there's dependencies, so here's a list of dependencies. You see here in this dependencies node. So here are the dependencies. So it's read from the POM file. Everything is interpreted from that POM file. If you do a build or a clean and build or any of these project type tasks, what you're actually doing is you're calling Maven commands, Maven goals. So you can see when I do build project, I'm doing a Maven install. When I do clean project, I'm doing Maven clean. When I do run project, I'm doing a package, and I can customize and modify that. And I can map all of those commands to keyboard shortcuts, so that when I press F5 to build, then the currently selected project is taken, the currently used project, and then the Maven install will be done using the install of that particular POM file. So this really tight integration makes it an attractive, really attractive for Maven developers. In addition to that, there's nice things like graphs of your dependencies. So here's the graph, which you can lay out in different ways. And you can make an image of it and send it to your manager or hang it on the wall or something. See the effect of POM, so all the entries coming from different parent projects and things like that. So this Maven integration is really pretty cool. So that's it. Then the other two interesting things are extensibility and community. NetBeans has a rich set of APIs. You can extend NetBeans in different ways. And what you can do is you can use NetBeans as the basis of your own software. So there are many examples of this, and also in Sweden. So if I look on this is a long list of, these are all Java Swing applications. So this application is created here. The FOI, they're doing Defense Force, air traffic, military type analysis. And you can see this looks a bit like NetBeans in a way. It's got this similar structure, but instead of having a Java project or Maven project, you have a military project, and you have a big map. So you can use the NetBeans infrastructure as the basis of your own software. Another example, Sweden. Does anyone know about this system? NATO Biran. It's yes, smiling people, or not? No, okay. So a blood bank management system. So these are all Swing applications. Actually, I think Swing is great. I'm a big fan of Swing, by the way, because it just does a wonderful job of for a certain class of applications. So blood bank system, this is an application from an organization in Hudiksvall. I went to see them a few years ago, a few times. It's a economics, accounting system type application. It looks really nice. So you can actually use the NetBeans infrastructure, the NetBeans platform, as the basis of your own software. So that's another really interesting aspect of it. And then the final thing is there's a community of people around the world who use it and are active with it. There's a roadmap, a public roadmap, publicly available. So right now we're on NetBeans 8.1, and 8.2 is coming up this year. And next year, with the release of Java 9, there'll be NetBeans 9. So I want to show you some features of the upcoming release. In the first place, what I'm showing here is actually a Java 9 jigsaw project. So this is a modular system, and what I'm showing here is not NetBeans IDE 8.2, but actually a build of NetBeans IDE 9. I'll show you the use case of a jigsaw in this particular case. So we have here an anagram game, and you can see that there are different categories of anagrams. So I can do animals. I can say a new word. Okay, so that's okay. That should be dog. I guess it's correct. I can go a new word. I get another animal. So then I say, okay, well I don't want animals every time. I want to have technical words. So then I say a new word, and then a technical word comes up, and this longer words, more complicated words. And so, okay, I don't want technical words, I'll have names. And I say new word, and here's a name of a person, so it's, in this case, it's Harry, I guess. So the interesting thing here is that the architecture of this application is modular, enabling us to throw another module into the application structure without having it depend on anything else, and it will automatically be picked up and included in the application. So in NetBeans 9, every Java project will automatically be a jigsaw module. And in jigsaw modules, what we have for the first time is a module system. But what we have as well is a kind of configuration file called moduleinfo.java. And you can see this here, and there are new keywords like exports and users and module. And for each module in the application, you can define what its environment is. And ultimately what you'll be able to do is to create a JRE that just uses those libraries that you actually need, rather than the entire JRE. So here you can see that this particular module requires these particular modules from the JRE. So that's expressed in this module info file. Then here's another module info file, and what you can see here is that there's a keyword exports, and what we're doing here is we're saying that these particular packages in this particular module we're exporting, and you can see this visualized in this project structure by an unlocked symbol and a locked symbol. We are exporting these two particular packages, so those particular packages can be imported in other modules. But anything that is not exported will not be able to be imported in another module. So by default, everything within a module is hidden from all the other modules in the system. And each of these that you see down here, animal, names, and technical, are implementations of an API that we've defined in this earlier module. So it enables us to, by default, hide packages from other parts of the application, and also create a service provider infrastructure, as I have here. So this is coming up in NetBeans 9 together with Java 9, so it enables us to create a more modular architecture for applications, natively in Java for the first time. But what I also want to show here is a very small thing. If I wanted to change all of these requires to exports for some reason, standard feature in NetBeans is to standard feature in NetBeans is to be able to select across those lines. So you can see here that we can select across lines and change those at the same time. But what we'll be able to do from NetBeans 8.2 onwards for the first time ever is have multiple cursors. So here you can see that we have two different cursors, and I've created a second cursor by pressing Ctrl-Shift, and I can create as many cursors as I want, anywhere in a particular file. And you might think, so what's the point of that? Well, it turns out that this is the most requested feature in the NetBeans IssueZilla. Yes?
Do you have also so that you can use a key command to select multiple of the same kind?
Yes.
You have that?
Yes, as well. Yes. So this really is the most requested feature in the NetBeans bug tracker. And you will see, if you look at that particular issue, it goes on. It's gone back for many years, and people have said, well, this is such a small feature. It must be trivial to do. Why don't you spend a couple of weeks working on this? But of course, this is a fundamental feature within an editor. And originally we had one cursor within an editor document, and that is the way things used to be in 96, 97. Modern editors nowadays all have multiple different cursors, so it's completely standard in newer editors. But so we had to rewrite the whole cursor infrastructure and a whole bunch of stuff, and it took months and months and months of several engineers working on this. So we hope that those people who've left because they were missing this will come back and use NetBeans again. But we'll see. And something else, another new feature that's coming up that I want to show. This will be in NetBeans 8.2. So maybe I should just close this and just try and restart it. It seems to have crashed a bit. Okay. So here it is again. One other feature that I want to show, and you can see also that it starts up pretty fast. Exactly when I said that, it's slowed down. So. Never say that while it's happening, of course. Okay, so other really interesting feature I want to show about the upcoming NetBeans 8.2 is this. Actually, can't remember how much time I had. Ah, okay, 1 more minute, perfect. So what you see here is this is the same application as before. Now, at some point, these different libraries are going to be loaded. Now, let's say that we want to track, we want to see, we want to debug and step through this code, okay? And we want to see each library being loaded. So now I set here a breakpoint. So I've set a breakpoint here, and I want to see each different library being loaded. So I should see something different for each iteration here. So now we start the debugger. So I say debug. And we get to the first iteration, okay? And so now we kind of, so normally this wouldn't be here yet, so we delete this, let's delete this. So we get here, so now I wonder, okay, so we've hit our breakpoint. So what is the value of library? Now I can do a couple of different things normally in NetBeans. So one is, I can hover over it, as you can see. I can see here, okay, so this is animal. This is the library animal. But so now let's say I want to know what is going on down here. I have to hover over it again. And so now I've hovered over two different things, but I'd like to see them both together. So what you would normally do is you would set a watch. So it's all the way down here, new watch, and you call it library, for example. And now we can follow that value as it changes. But what we can do in NetBeans 8.2, what you see here when you hover, for the first time is a small pin, very small pin icon. And then when you see that, what it means is you can click on that pin. So I've clicked on it. And what this is called is a pinnable watch. So now I can put this here. And where this becomes especially useful is when you are editing your code, which is more than likely like this. And now you don't have that watch window anyway. Even if you were using that watch window, it's gone now. So now you have the debugger really integrated into the editor. So here you can see this animal, and that's what the current value is. So now I step through it some more. So let me just remind myself that was, okay, F5. So now I step through it again. And, well, that was the point. Okay, here we get there again. And, well, let's go back. And debug. So debug. So we get here, and right now it's animal, and we pin it, and we step through. And you can see now that this changes to technical, and I'm normally going to be coding in this kind of mode, and this one now I can also pin, and I can move them around within the editor wherever I like. And this one, all these different variables I can pin to see what the current value is as we step through in our debugger. So a really nice tight integration between the debugger and the editor. That's it's one of the big upcoming features. Again, this is something that took a lot of work to get right. So coming up in 8.2 is this support for the pinnable watches and for the multi-cursors, but also other features like Docker integration. Of course, everyone is interested in Docker nowadays. So you can see here there's a Docker node, and you can have Docker Hub, and you can connect to Docker Hub and display all your containers and all your images, and PHP 7 support, and there's a whole bunch of related features to that. What was new in NetBeans 8.1 was the support. The main feature in 8.1 was the support for Node.js. So there's a bunch of templates and wizards and things for that. So that's basically, very quickly, some features. So Java, it's a very clear ecosystem. The JavaScript ecosystem, of course, is a bit of a nightmare right now. There are no clear standards between all these different frameworks and libraries. But we're trying to do our best despite that. So we have all these tools, this browser integration, Angular integration, Grunt and Gulp. We spent months working on the support for Grunt. And then we said, hey, we have Grunt support. And everyone said, great, but now we're using Gulp. And so we worked on Gulp support. And then people said, that's nice, but now there's Brunch. This whole landscape is very difficult for tool providers. And then there's integration with the technologies around it. So Git especially is really smooth. Payara, Glassfish, Wildfly integration provided by Red Hat. Gradle is supported in a similar way to Maven. So NetBeans recognizes if there is a Gradle file in a folder, and then you can just open it into the development environment. I've done a bunch of demos already. Community very quickly. So we very much focused on community and on schools, universities, and going to meetups and jugs and things like that. So there's a Facebook, and we've just got 100,000 likes recently for the first time. And there's Twitter, and there's YouTube channel, and there's a newsletter every week, in principle. And many books that are being written, new books, old books being written all the time. There's a program called Netcat. So this is the NetBeans Community Acceptance Testing program, whereby anyone who is enthusiastic about NetBeans can join the testing community, and you get the test specifications, and you can actually, without a go from this group of volunteers, NetBeans isn't released. So we really listen to the community. There's a dream team. Ivar is part of this. So these are people around the world who are very enthusiastic about NetBeans, about the ideas behind it. They go to conferences, they don't get paid, and promote NetBeans and the community. There's a teachers organization on Google Groups, teachers group, that share tips and tricks about using NetBeans in the classroom. There's a translation community. There's a kids community. epic.org.uk. This used to be called Encouraging Programming in Kent in England, but then they thought, let's become bigger, and so they changed it to kids. And so it's for all children. So it's similar to DevOps for kids. Parents bring the children to program on Saturday morning, and they play Minecraft, and then they are shown how to hack the code, and gradually they start using NetBeans and rewriting the code. There's a podcast that we work on, and you're invited to be part of this. It's quite, we're in a bit of a difficult position as NetBeans, because originally we were part of Sun, and it was very clear we were, open source. Sun was focused on open source. Now we're part of Oracle, and we're still there, but it's kind of a different environment where it's not so much about open source, it's more about making money. So we have to find ways to connect what we do to the revenue streams of Oracle and continually try and fit into places where we're somehow valuable. But we're still there, and we're still active, and we're still developing and continuing to provide new features. There are articles that you can write. You can use NetBeans in the classroom. You can invite us to come for free to your university or school to give a workshop. We can come to you as a customer or as any user of NetBeans. We can come and introduce NetBeans to you as an organization. All kinds of different ways we'd love to support you. If you as an organization are using NetBeans, we can do a customer case study with you and promote you for free on oracle.com. So anyway you like, we'd like to support you. That's NetBeans. That's NetBeans. Are there questions? Are there users of NetBeans, people who have in the past or are right now? Or yes? Yeah. And what do you like?
But I like it, it's fast.
Yeah.
Compared to Android Studio.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And I would like to if the NetBeans will support Node.js, because now I start to.
Yeah. I mean, it's this is one of the key features in 8.1. So there's in here a Node.js and also with Express if you want. So HTML5 application with Node. So you can click through here and choose Express, and it creates an Express front end on your Node application, or pure Node on the back end. So here's a back end application, and what you see is a Node. Oh, wait. Node HTTP. Hey, we have the server. This is a server in Node, and it took like 2 seconds to write. It's a template, and it gives you a starting point. You can this code completion in here, if I'm right. Yes, here. So you can see that Node uses modules. So here we are using a module called HTTP. If I do code completion here, I can see all of the modules that are available, plus documentation about the module, and the methods that are available on the object that I have assigned to that particular module are determined by that module. So here I can see create server. So that comes from there, and yeah. Well, let me choose a different one. Instead of that, we can choose, for example, console. So now the code completion here will be different, and it will show me the different properties down here because I've switched to a different module. So that's basically it. And there's here an HTML5 tab where you can fine-tune your Express generator and your Node generator and things like that. And here's the Node path. Integration with Yeoman as well. Android, Karma, Gulp, Grunt, CSS preprocessors, Bower, all these HTML5 technologies are built in. So what I want to talk about now until 8 is a new project from Oracle, and I like it a lot. And I must say I don't like most things, most projects in Oracle, because most of them are not open source and they're kind of very cloud oriented and very business oriented. This one is too, in a way, but this is what I work on in addition to working on NetBeans. It's a free and open source project from Oracle, and one of very few. Oracle isn't famous for being open source oriented. If you go to github.com/Oracle, there's actually Oracle on GitHub, by the way. And one of the projects on here is Oracle Jet, and that's the topic that I want to talk about. In short, what it is a front-end toolkit. So if you're using Angular or experimenting with Angular or any front-end JavaScript, you could see this as an alternative to that. And what it does on the back end is up to you. You could use Node or REST or anything you like on the back end. This is a pure front end, pure JavaScript, CSS, HTML on the front end story. So I want to introduce this project to you, tell you where it comes from and why it's there and the ideas behind it, and do some demos as well. So there's actually a Twitter handle for this, Oracle Jet. And Oracle Jet is the name, and it turns out Jet stands for JavaScript Extension Toolkit. So the important letter here is this T, Toolkit. It's not a framework. It's not a framework. So by framework, you would assume a complete stack solution. You build your application on top of all of this stuff. And it's not a library. It's not jet.js. Instead, it's like a toolbox full of different existing open source libraries, plus a few additions from Oracle. And why did Oracle do this is the first question. What does Oracle care about JavaScript? Well, because Oracle cares about the cloud, like everyone else, especially large organizations. They want to play a role in the cloud. Salesforce, IBM, Microsoft, everyone is talking about the cloud. Oracle is also talking about the cloud. But what is cloud? Cloud is data. And data is somewhere in the cloud, but it's not just about storage. It's also about the fact that you want to create applications that work with that data in the cloud. And of course, we know that nowadays, most people, in one way or another, interact with data via an application in their browser. So on their mobile device, on the browser, on the desktop. So working directly with the browser and not via some indirect client server, JSF, getting back stuff from somewhere, but working directly in JavaScript. And this is what Oracle is also trying to do. Normally, I'm really from a Java background. When I hear JavaScript for serious applications, I get worried because it's not type safe and it's always a mess. JavaScript is always a big pile of mess to me. And those applications don't last very long, and etc. So what role does JavaScript have to play in business applications? And Oracle has been asking itself that same question for the last 3 years and has come up with a set of recommendations and components and suggestions for how those kinds of applications can be built in JavaScript. And that collection of solutions is called Oracle Jet. So it's a toolbox that extends standard JavaScript with additional enterprise-related features. And within Oracle, many applications nowadays are being created using this set of techniques. But it's not just a philosophy, and it's not just a bunch of existing libraries. It's also a bunch of JavaScript components. So if you're creating a business application for business users, at some point you need some graphs and charts. So Oracle created graphs and charts in JavaScript on top of jQuery UI, and this is part of this Jet solution. So here are some examples to make it concrete. This is Oracle Solaris dashboard. So this is a browser-based application written in JavaScript. You can access it via mobile device. You can access it in the browser on the desktop. And you would think, what does Solaris have to do with JavaScript? Well, it's a monitoring application, and people monitor stuff in their browser. This application, you can see, has all these graphs and charts, and it's been written in JavaScript. In the past, Oracle would never touch JavaScript. You would never have a development team in Oracle writing JavaScript applications on the front end. You would have Apex, you would have ADF, and there's about 10 other technologies that you may or may not have heard of that Oracle would use for these kinds of graphic dashboard type applications. But in the meantime, everyone's on the browser, on the different devices. Plus, when a student comes from university or college, they come with existing JavaScript knowledge. So they join Oracle, and they spend 6 months learning ADF or Apex or some other Oracle technology. So what Oracle is now doing is saying, look, you already have JavaScript knowledge. Why don't you just join a team that's working with JavaScript and you can be productive immediately? So all these ideas, on the one hand, making it easy to get people on board in products within Oracle, and on the other hand, because the browser is everywhere, this JavaScript solution has been worked on. So within Oracle, there's many cloud services. Every organization in Oracle has its own cloud service. There's an Internet of Things organization which has an Internet of Things cloud service. There's a mobile organization, mobile cloud service. There's many cloud services, and all of those services need a front end. And they need some kind of monitoring dashboard type thing. So this is the BI Visual Analyzer Data Visualization Cloud Service in Oracle. and they created the front end to monitor some underlying processes, and they like this lightweight and open client architecture. Another example is this one. So this is again Solaris dashboard. This is a business intelligence cloud service. This is the same service. This is management cloud. This is the enterprise manager cloud service. So all these different, let's go back. All these different applications that you see here have been created in JavaScript, have been created in Oracle. And so what's been announced at Open World and JavaOne last year for the first time is that this has been happening, that people have been using JavaScript inside Oracle, and that these solutions and technologies and techniques and components are now available open source. So anyone can take the same components that Oracle has used for its applications and use them in your own applications. And this is actually an interesting trend. So look, for example, at Kraken. Has anyone heard of Kraken.js? Okay, so krakenjs.com, very interesting, PayPal open source. So I went to a conference and there was a VP from PayPal at a developer conference. And I thought, why is a VP from PayPal, what's he doing at a developer conference? And he was talking about Kraken.js. So at PayPal, they've been working with Node.js internally for some years. They extended Node.js and Express with their own components over some time. And at some point I said, hey, we're going to make it open source and get people to contribute to it, contribute to our stack and help us move forward. And we're nice people. We're not just a commercial organization. And so we can come to your conference and talk about PayPal and all these different things. So Kraken is another example. Of course, there's many, but another one that's very interesting is Spectingular. So it's kind of died down a bit, but this is ING. You know the bank ING. So it happens to be my bank, or not personally, but I use it. So you can see all these components with like these orange borders and boundaries and stuff. So if you wanted to create your own application that looks similar to the ING applications, ING has open sourced their components and their techniques and strategies and whatever in a GitHub repository. There hasn't been much activity in this since they announced it with a lot of fanfare about 4 years ago at Devoxx. I haven't seen any development since then. I've tried to contact the developers working on it and they haven't responded, so maybe it hasn't gone very far, but it's the same trend. So ING has open source stuff, PayPal has open source stuff, so Oracle is doing the same thing, and Jet is a very clear example of that. So what happened at Oracle was that the idea is it's important to have a solution so that those organizations who want to use JavaScript, that they can use JavaScript in a structured manner, so that not every organization in Oracle has to compare Angular to Knockout to the 10 other libraries or 20 or 50 other libraries, but that we as an organization decide for everyone else, this is the stack that we're going to use. And so that was kind of the starting point. And the idea is also not to create yet another framework. So there are enough frameworks there already. So Oracle decided we're not going to create another framework and compete with everybody else with a kind of traditional Oracle way of doing things, like create a whole new thing and then compete with everybody else who's already doing something that's working fine. Instead of that, the idea with Jet is, let's take some of the existing libraries out there that solve specific problems. Let's take those libraries and combine them together into a toolkit, so into a toolbox. We'll just pick a few that make sense, and we'll add this layer of GUI components on top of that. And we'll use that as the starting point for all of our applications that want to use JavaScript. So then, if that's the place where you are, then the problem becomes, okay, there's so many libraries and technologies out there, which ones do you choose? And how do you choose the libraries that you want to use? Like everyone who's been exploring JavaScript, especially when you come from a Java background, it's a very exciting place because there's so much innovation. Every week there's a new library that you can play with, and then you use it in your application, and then you have a problem, and it turns out that the people who created it are doing something different now, and they're not working on it anymore, and you have a problem, and then you go to Google and you put in your error message to see what you should do, and then they tell you, well, here's a solution. If you're using a stack that includes A, B, and C, and you think, I'm not using A, B, and C, I'm using C, D, and E, and it doesn't quite fit. And so this kind of nightmare situation is where we are now. So on the one hand, it's nice and innovative, and it's very creative, and it's an interesting ecosystem, but it's very unstable, especially if you're creating business applications, because with these business applications, you're not in a situation where you want to quickly create a game or a prototype and throw it away, and create another one and throw it away and create another one. You want to create an application that's going to be there for a couple of years. So how do you do that in this JavaScript cowboy ecosystem? That's kind of the question that Oracle had as well. And the answer is, as everyone has been doing, is to first organize all these different options into categories. There's application frameworks, there's component libraries, there's module systems, there's build systems, there's testing frameworks, and then there's Yeoman and Node and Bower. And the next step is to say, okay, it's a big mess, and then the next point is to try and first look at what are the requirements of an application. And these are the requirements of Oracle applications. Responsive design, so that application changes its shape depending on which resolution it's on. So mobile device, it looks different to a desktop browser. That there is some concept of modularity which isn't built into JavaScript right now. A single page application architecture, accessibility for keyboard and screen reader for hard of sight and hearing problems, internationalization, security, performance, standards where they are there, and documentation and support. So these are important requirements for enterprise applications. And so we started with that. We took these requirements, and then we went and chose some libraries that solve those particular problems, and we combined those libraries together. So the most important two are require and knockout. Has anyone here heard of or used require? Okay, so one, okay. So I'll do a small, I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. So this is another interesting thing. So people look at these two. So these are the most important libraries that are part of the JET toolkit. So people say, yeah, but require, that's pretty old module system, and knockout, okay, two-way data binding, but you can do it in a more modern way with Angular 2, right? But Angular 2 has been in development for years, and it's not complete yet. And the way that Oracle works is, let's not choose the latest and greatest stuff. Let's use something that's slightly older and that's well established, that there's a community around it, that won't fall over tomorrow, that we can rely on. So Require has been there for a while, and Knockout has been there for a while. And they both solve a very specific problem. And those problems I want to briefly describe. So I want to first describe the problem in standard JavaScript that Require is very useful for. Here. So here is a very simple sales system. Okay, I'll warn you, it's very simple. And it's written in JavaScript, and it's here's the index file. Okay, here's the index file. Okay, so you can see we're loading 4 JavaScript files here. So we load our authentication system. So this is very simple. If the name that comes in is longer than 1, authentication succeeds. Not recommended system, but it's a simulation of a system. Then there is this buyer class, or buyer JavaScript file. A name comes in, is authenticated, and so if authentication succeeds, then something is sent to them, to the name, and something is sent to them. And if it fails, then an apology is sent. We say, sorry, authentication failed, so you don't get anything. And then there's a main, and here's the main.js. You can see there's a name that is hard-coded here, and it goes into the console, and then something is bought, and that authentication happens, and so on. So if I run this, nothing will happen in the browser, but it will show in the output window. So you can see here that the person enters the system, and they try to buy something, and buying succeeds, because authentication succeeds. So if we make the name less than 1, so like 0, you can see that the whole system now sale is false and authentication fails. So very small application simulating a sales system, but this is the problem. What would happen if we load main up here instead of down there? Would it still work? So now run the application, and it crashes. Because in main, we are referring to buyer. And buyer hasn't been loaded yet. So this is really a load order. So authenticator is loaded, and it is evaluated. Main is loaded and evaluated, and buyer isn't there. So it fails. And this is a very small JavaScript application with 4 JavaScript files. In a serious application with hundreds of files, having to figure out the load order of all of those files is almost impossible. So this is one problem. The other problem is we're loading all of our files within the index file. Whereas in a real application, we might want to load some files on mobile phone and some on a desktop browser. But in standard JavaScript, we have to load everything at the same time in the index file. So what require does is it gives us concepts for solving this problem. And so I'll show you the equivalent of that using require. So this is exactly the same system as before. It works exactly the same way, same result, except that instead of loading 4 JavaScript files, so here we're loading 4 JavaScript files, we are now loading 1. And that one is require.js. So it's just it's an open source library. You can go to require.js.org. It exists. Oracle didn't create it. It's been there for years. And we can see that here we are loading require. And here we have a special attribute data main. And in the require library, there's a definition of this attribute data main. And it provides the entry point for require for getting into the application. And here's the entry point, main.js. And it looks very similar to the original. So here's the original 4 statements. And here's our new file, except that it's wrapped inside of a require block. And each application that uses require has one of these blocks. And you can compare it to a public static void main in a Java application. So this is the entry point of the application. So here we can specify what we need require to find for us. And normally we would have a configuration file that require will use to find the files that we need. But in this case, everything is found in the same folder, so we don't need that. So it's a very simple application. So require is going to find buyer for us. It will load buyer. It will find it in the same folder. So we don't have to specify that it exists and where to find it and etc. We just say we want a file called buyer and we want to use it in our application. And then require.js will look for it. All the other files in the application are different too. So here is thing, which originally had 2 methods here, send thing and send apology. And in the new thing is send thing and send apology is there, but it's wrapped in a define block. So each JavaScript file in our modular application is wrapped in a define block. And this, in required terminology, is a module. So any JavaScript file which has its method wrapped in a define block in which we specify our dependencies is called a module. And you can see it is modular. It's in the sense that it defines its own environment. We are defining here in this file that in order for this to work, we need to have these other files present in the to this particular file, and then require somehow finds those files for us. So what we've solved in using require is in the first place that we are not loading 4 JavaScript files. We're loading 1, and we're delegating the loading to that file. And secondly, we are able to specify when a JavaScript file should be loaded. So if we're on the desktop browser, we might not want certain files. If we're on the mobile browser, we might want other files. So we can now specify when something should be loaded. So these concepts of modularity are built into Jet. And similarly, there's Knockout, which also has concepts that are very interesting and useful. It provides 2-way data binding. So let me find a very simple example of that. So here it is. And again, Knockout is an existing, let's not look at my bank account, but Knockout is also a free and open source library. And it is focused in the same way that Require is focused very specifically on modularity. Knockout is focused specifically on data binding. So there's many examples here, a lot of documentation. And I'll show you what this simple example does. So we can see there's a first name and a last name. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay, so there's a first name and a last name. John Smith. And it's not in itself very exciting, but if you look in the index file, we can see here a first name and the last name, and here we can see the full name. And the first name, I mean, this is all plain normal HTML, except that we have here a data bind attribute, which comes from knockout. What we're saying here is we are binding the text input attribute to a property called first name, and we are binding this text input attribute of the input element to a property called last name, and we binding the text attribute in the span element to a property called full name. And those properties are defined inside of JavaScript. So here is a first name, and we don't have to define a getter and a setter and a property change listener. Like in Java, we can just say knockout observe the first name, knockout observe the last name, and knockout compute the full name whenever the first name or the last name change. So via this mechanism, we're able to connect JavaScript business logic to an HTML view. And if you were to imagine a require module, like this define block that we saw, with a view expressed in HTML, we can use knockout to combine those two, this view and the module in JavaScript together. So that's the core idea of Jet, that you have modularity and that you have data binding. If you were to combine these two libraries together, you would actually have a Jet application. So now let's look at Jet itself. Oracle JavaScript Extension Toolkit. These are the libraries that underpin it. So require and knockout, I've already talked about. jQuery UI is underneath Jet. jQuery is for Ajax and JSON calls. Hammer is for touch on mobile devices. When we look on the Oracle Jet homepage, so I'm on oraclejet.org, you can see these are the libraries. And you can see that if I click on this button here, so there's 3 buttons on the homepage. Get started, you can go, if you click on that, you will see that there's a Yeoman generator. So if you do anything with JavaScript, you know about Yeoman. So you can type Yo Oracle Jet and a project name, and then you'll get a basic application architecture that uses require, and that uses jQuery, and that uses knockout. You can also do Yo Oracle Jet hybrid, and then you get a Cordova application. So a JavaScript application uses Cordova, so that you can generate a hybrid application for Android or for iOS from that structure. So you can use any editor or IDE you want. It's pure front end, but there is a special plugin for this for NetBeans. And we really see NetBeans as being the perfect tool to use for Jet, but you can use any other tool that you want. So I've installed this plugin into NetBeans, which means I can create new applications very easily. And there's also example applications that I can create. You can see here there's a bunch of examples as well at the end. Basic examples. So let's say that we take this one, HTML5 JavaScript application, Oracle Jet base distribution. This is the equivalent of doing this on the command line. So if I type Yo Oracle Jet and the project name template is basic, I will get the same as if I use this inside of NetBeans. And the result of that is this. So here you can see this is the application we get. And it's pure front-end stuff. It's pure libraries. So I mentioned most of the libraries already, Knockout, and these are the Jet components. So there's many components all in JavaScript. And so now let's start wiring it up. I first create an index page, new index. Here's the index. There it is. Okay, so we know we're going to use require for modularity. So here are my libraries, and I find require, and I just drag and drop it. And okay, so now we know that we have require, so we need to use an attribute called data main to provide the entry point. And in this template, we have a nice entry point. This main template, so it comes with that project template, with the generator. This is a standard require descriptor file, providing the location of the libraries we want to use, and also a require block. So this is very useful. A require block is the public static void main of our application. So I paste it in here, and now in my index file, I can say, okay, so our data main is going to be JS main. So here is our entry point. Now in the require block, what we're going to do here is we're going to say create a view model. So this is from knockout. And at the document ready, which is jQuery, we're going to apply the bindings, which means connect the view to the business logic. Okay, so now we're ready. So let's go into our index page, and we will load our first module. So we will create a module ourselves. So I'll say data bind OJ module. So it's very nice concepts of modularity built in here. So we'll say here's the header. Okay, so here's our first module that we're loading. We haven't defined it yet, but I'm just declaring it here. Header, and here is the main part of the application, and here's the footer. So right now it will not work, but what will happen automatically if we include a module in here called OJ module. So I'm going to include it. So we're using require, so something is only loaded if we include it in the require block or in the define block. So OJ module. So because we have OJ module here, and because we have said we want to load header, main, and footer, what will happen when we open this application into the browser is that OJ module will look inside of a specific folder. Inside of view models, it will look for a file called header.js, and in views, it will look for a file called header.html. So there's a concept of convention over configuration here. So again, because I have header here, I've said I want to load a module called header. What will automatically happen is that when we open the application, automatically inside of JS view models, a header.js will be looked for. And inside of JS views, a header.html will be looked for by Jet. So in here, we will define the business logic if you need it for our header. And here we will define the header itself. So let me say Momo jug registration system, for example. Okay, so here's our header. So next, we're saying here we want to have a main section. Okay, so we'll create a new module called main. And we also said we're going to load a footer, so we'll create a new module called footer. So what is nice about this is a number of different things. Normally, in a JavaScript application, you have a big pile of JavaScript. And with this Jet architecture, you have by default a modular system. So our footer is there, our header is there, our main is there. Each feature could be provided by a different module, which is by default defined as a JavaScript file and an HTML file, which are found in these specific folders with matching names. If you don't want a view for it, you can leave out the view, also possible, or you can have just a view and no business logic. All these variations are possible. So let's take a look at our footer. So the footer, let's say it's going to be HR, and we're going to add a copyright symbol probably. Let's see if we can find that copy. Here's copyright Malmo jug. So here's our footer, and here's the main part. Well, whatever. So main. So that's all. So now let's open this into the browser, and here we can see it. It's not this large really. It's just that I made the font bigger. But here you can see the start of our application, a header, a main section, and a footer is already. So let's go back in here, and probably the footer can be, we change this, and again, I do Control S to save it, and then I look back in the browser, and I can see that change has been done. Or I go back into the main HTML, and hello world, and I do a save, and I can see that in the browser. Probably we don't want an H1. Let's make this P tag instead. Okay, so here's a starting point of our application in a modular structure. So now the next step is we want to have some components. So if I'm on the home page, I click on Use Cookbook at the end there, and I will be in this page. And here I can see each of the components, and they're not just pictures. So for example, if I click here on data visualizations, I will be on this page. And here I can see all the graphs and the charts. So let's imagine we want to include this gauge in our application. So I click on that, and I'm on this page then. And now here I can see the HTML view of that gauge and the business logic. So these are the jQuery UI components from Oracle that provide those different charts and graphs. Now here you can see OJ dial gauge, you can see a data bind from Knockout. You can see here require, so this is require.js entry point. So let's copy, the whole point is to copy and paste from here. And also, this is like JS Fiddle. So we can tweak things. So you can see right now it's set to 50, that gauge. I can change the 50 here to say 10, say apply changes, and you can see that now it's applied to that gauge. So I can tweak the code directly inside of the browser. So once I'm happy with it, I take the HTML, I just copy this, I go back into my, where was it, the main HTML. Let's just remove the other guys and just have this work with the main module now. So we're working in the main module, and in the main module, we want to not have hello world, but our actual dial gauge. So this is the gauge. And the interesting thing here is that you can see here dial gauge. You can see code completion in NetBeans. So this is this special support that NetBeans has for Jet. And if I use code completion on the properties, I can see here in the code completion the properties of that dial gauge. So if I'm using a different component here, so let's say I'm using a button, and I do code completion control space, you can see now I see different properties because the property code completion is context aware of which of the components I'm using. So I can see all the properties. These are the events on the gauge, or on the button in this case, and here's the documentation. So we have this dial gauge, and now we're actually loading it into the application, and you will see an error immediately. So let's refresh the browser. You can see right now that there is a problem here. Some component is not found. So what we're doing on the view is we are using the dial gauge, but when you go back into here, we can see that we don't only have a view, but we also have business logic. And we are using a gauge, but we haven't loaded that gauge yet. So because we're using require, we have to specify each component that we want to use. So I copy this, and I go back into the business logic here, and I say, okay, we want to have this gauge included. So include the gauge, and now we try and refresh the browser, and we see there's another problem. And you can see here, gauge value is not defined. Now in our view, we are making use of a value here, gauge value. Now this is a knockout property, so it means that we should have, on the JavaScript side, a definition of that property. So now we look again in that cookbook, and we can see, here it is. Here is the definition of that property. So we copy it from here, and we paste it into our JavaScript. And now we look in the browser, and we see our gauge. Okay, so there was no coding at all. It's just copying from the cookbook. So now let's say that we want to display. So let's just remove that stuff. So let's say we want to display the current value. What is the current value that is selected? That would be nice if we could. So let's also surround this with, let's say, an H2. Okay. So we want to display the current value as it changes. Every time we stop moving it, we want to see the current value. That's not hard because we have knockout. So we data bind the text attribute of the span element to the gauge value. So we're now binding the text attribute of the span element to the gauge value defined within the OJ dialog. So now you can see that as I change, that is updated automatically. So no getters and setters, no property change listeners, none of the standard Java stuff. Now the next step would be, okay, let's make it two-way. So we'll make an input, we will bind the value attribute of the input element to the gauge value. So now we can go this way, you can see it updates, but we can also go the other way. So now I can make a change here, and you can see that automatically there's a change done in that gauge. So, a very simple example, but more likely we want to do something with a layout. And there's a lot of thought that's been put into that aspect. So, if you use the Quick Start Basic template as a starting point, which is more interesting, you get this. Now take a look at this. This is a complete template with different areas, the home area, navigation area, complementary area. When I click on these different items, you will automatically see that the main area is updated. And what you also see is we are within a single page. This is a single page architecture. And when we make the browser small, you will see that the menu disappears and that you will get a special menu that you will get on mobile devices. So let's make this a smartphone portrait. And now you can see here is this pop-out thing that you would expect on a mobile device. And once it's out and we make it large again, it will automatically disappear. So all of these mobile desktop browser responsive design ideas are built in. Single page application architecture. These are all different modules. This is one module, this is one module, this is one module. And for a more complete example, so if we're back on the home page, you can see get started. This was about the YAML generators. Use cookbook. This was about those components and and all the code included. But there's also try demo. If you do that, you will get to this application, which is basically the reference implementation of JET. This is an employee management system. And here's the employee, and here you can see, so this is like a dashboard for the HR managers. This is the open headcount, the new hires, terminations, attrition history, notifications. It's typically, if you're creating some kind of dashboard application, this is a very useful toolkit to use. JET. So you can see this responsive design stuff is built in. When we're small again in the browser, we can see this pop-out thing. And all the source code of this is available as well. So you can use this as a starting point of an application. So we've very quickly gone through all the basic ideas. And these are the most important ones. So Oracle JET is an architecture and a philosophy and a set of components that Oracle is using internally, and it's now open sourced. It's really for JavaScript developers. It's really a front-end technology. What you do on the back end is up to you. You can use Node, you can use REST, you can use anything you like on the back end. It's completely agnostic to that. It's for JavaScript developers, really. It's based on open source libraries, as you've seen, Knockout and Require and jQuery. For Oracle, it's interesting because of all the cloud applications that are being created. Mobile cloud service, IoT cloud service, and so on. And it has built into it modularity, you've seen that. But also, very important for Oracle applications, accessibility. So back in our gauge. So right now, I am not using my mouse, I'm using the keyboard. So this left and right keyboard keys actually move the gauge automatically. So wherever it makes sense to include accessibility features, those are built in already. And so at Open World last year and JavaOne last year, this was announced as a new direction for Oracle, and it was available for Oracle Cloud customers that had paid to use mobile cloud service and things like that. But in February this year, it became open source. So it's a very liberal license. You can use it in your production code. You don't have to ask anybody. You can just take the code. You can use it for your applications. I've done many demos. Wherever there are standards in this area, we're following them. So right now, jQuery UI is used as the basis of the components. But at the same time, web components and Polymer are becoming more popular as an alternative way to create components. So we're tracking those developments, and once those are stable, which might be like 3 years from now or so, we will reconsider how we define our components. So we're tracking those things too. So that's the whole story in a nutshell. On the homepage, you will see that aside from the getting started part, this reference implementation, the cookbook, there is also an examples tab here with many different tutorials. There are resources, which means things like videos, and if you go on the support page, you'll see there's a forum, there's an FAQ, there's a blog, there's videos, development guide, complete PDF is ready, discussing all these important enterprise topics. If you're doing JavaScript in the enterprise, how to think about internationalization, what about security, what about validation, all these things. There are solutions for within the JET architecture. We are also working on a MOOC, a massive open online course, which will be freely available by the time we get to JavaOne Open World, so about September, there'll be a 3-week course you can take for free, and each of the 3 weeks will be in 10 different parts, and each part will be 5-6 minutes screencasts. And there'll be tasks to do, and you get a certificate at the end for completing it. So we're doing a lot of work in popularizing it. I guess that's the whole story.